Hey, what's up guys? In today's video, we're going to be checking out the Canyon Neuron ONfly CF7 beside me here, a Bosch SX-powered lightweight electric mountain bike. Stay tuned to learn a little bit about it and find out how it's performed so far in this review on loamwolf.com. Let's go. Yes, this is the Canyon Neuron ONfly CF7, and it's more of a mouthful than it is a handful because this is certainly not a super heavyweight electric mountain bike. The fly on the name denotes Canyon's lightweight electric bikes, so it's joined by the new Spectral ONfly in the sort of mid-power, slightly lighter weight, but still electrified assisted space. The Neuron ONfly is the shorter travel of the two fly offerings so far, with 140mm travel on both ends and 29-inch wheels, and general geometry and characteristics that are tailored more towards your kind of typical trail center style of riding, rather than anything particularly aggressive. That said, it's still given a fairly stout overall frame. It's still given plentiful range with the 400 watt-hour internal battery and the optional 250 watt-hour range extender you can fit to the Bosch SX system. It'll still give you 55 newton meters of torque to get you up the hill, 600 watts of peak power, the same as a full power system, as long as you're able to maintain a high enough cadence to deliver it, because it depends on a fairly high RPM in the 110, 120 RPM range. And generally, it's certainly an interesting machine. Some of the geometry will maybe point you more towards slightly more aggressive intentions, whereas other elements to the suspension characteristics and just general handling and feel of the bike definitely keep it within the sort of trail center attacking space. As is typical for the Bosch SX system, you've got Bosch's smart system with the integrated LED hub on the top tube, which gives you battery life in 10% increments, as well as displaying what mode you're in. You get the wireless mini remote up on the handlebar, which lets you toggle between different modes and also use the walk mode. And then Bosch's eBike Flow app lets you do everything from changing the modes, tailoring them to your preferences, to locking the bike and preventing theft or activating an alarm and tracking it, as well as also giving you the ability to look at the map and pre-plan a route and also identify the modes that you'll be able to use the system in order to complete the route successfully without running out of battery, which is a really cool feature, I think. Taking a look at the rest of the bike, it's a carbon fiber only frame. You can only run 29-inch wheels, at least there's no flip chip or anything to change to a 27.5-inch wheel in the back. It's got 140mm travel on both ends, and in fairly typical Canyon style, all the details are fairly well covered. You do have, sadly, internal headset cable routing. Won't be to everyone's preferences. There's no ports on the side of the head tube to fit a normal internal routing, sadly. But so far it's proved to be all right. Certainly I haven't had to do too much in the ways of maintenance yet, and that is where the internal headset cable routing systems can potentially add a little bit of complication, but you at least get the benefit of slightly cleaner overall cable management, and it helps to keep things a little bit quieter as well as looking that little bit cleaner. So it's not all bad. You get plenty of room inside the front triangle for a water bottle or the Bosch PowerMore range extender. There's little bumpers on the underside of the down tube preventing the fork from damaging it, as well as a knock block system in that headset to stop the bars from rotating enough to damage either your cables or let the fork contact the frame. You get a nice integrated motor guard protecting the Bosch SX system and really kind of sleekly integrates with the lines of the frame. Looks really good. There's plentiful protection on that chainstay. It does a reasonable job at keeping things fairly quiet, but there isn't any further frame protection, so the underside of the down tube is left bare, meaning if you do have rocks kicking up, they can cause a little bit of noise. And also the rear linkage area is a little bit vulnerable, and it can trap some rocks and cause a little bit of paint scar in there. Canyon offers the Neuron ONfly in a choice of 5 different sizes from extra small to extra large, and all of these share the same relative geometry and 29-inch wheels, but the extra small does receive 130mm travel instead of the 140 of the larger sizes, just to help keep riders a little bit better fitted and more comfortable overall. Geometry numbers are a 64.5 degree head tube angle, 76.5 degree effective seat tube angle. 36mm bottom bracket drop and quite long 450mm chainstays. The size range goes up in 25mm increments of reach and 9mm increments of stack there or thereabouts, meaning that, yeah, they're fairly close together in terms of their sizing, meaning that every rider should be able to get pretty close to their ideal fit. And then the size large that we tested here has a 485mm reach paired with a 644mm stack height. The overall wheelbase ends up at 1271mm, which is definitely on the longer side for a kind of more lighter duty trail focus machine. But as we'll talk about in the ride impressions, that certainly comes with its pros and its cons when you hit the trail. It'll depend on what region you're in as to which models Canyon makes available in the Neuron ONfly. North America only gets the CF7 that we tested here, the entry-level machine, whereas Europe gets a slightly wider selection going up to the CF Limited. This CF7 retails for $5,500 or 4,900 euros. And then the CF Limited goes up to 8,000 euros, of course, with a much higher, kind of more premium spec level on it. All of them share the same Bosch SX system and the carbon fiber frame. It's just the components that change depending on what build you select. And certainly the base of the frame and the drive unit are nice and high quality. You'll get 34 or 35mm stanchion forks regardless of what spec level you choose, big brakes with 200mm rotors on both ends to give you plentiful stopping power, lightweight inline rear shocks, and really nice and long travel dropper posts across the size range thanks to the plentiful insertion that the Neuron ONfly frame offers. This CF7 build is obviously the entry level and as such comes with certainly a fairly modest spec. There's a RockShox Pike base fork on there with a deluxe Select Plus rear shock. You get a set of Code R brakes with the 200mm rotors on both ends, a full Dior drivetrain, which has actually been really solid and offered me no concerns whatsoever. Canyon's in-house dropper post in nice and long lengths, as I mentioned, with their in-house alloy cockpit as well, and sadly their in-house grips, which should always be factored into being replaced immediately when you do buy a Canyon bike. And then rounding out the build, you've got a Roddy Tripe 30 Evo wheel set wrapped in a pair of Schwalbe tyres with a knobby neck in the rear and a hand stamp up front. Overall, out the box, the Canyon Neuron ONfly CF7, as we tested in the size large, tipped the scales at exactly 20 kilos or 44.1 pounds, which in the lightweight-ish e-mountain bike space is certainly reasonable, especially given its fairly entry-level pricing. But enough about the details, let's talk about the most important thing. How did the Canyon Neuron ONfly CF7 perform out on the trails? I've had this Canyon Neuron ONfly CF7 in my testing stable for quite a while at this point, but it's not really received the kind of level of usage you might expect given how long I've had it, and for a very good reason. Now, this is not me saying by any means that the Canyon Neuron ONfly is a bad bike, but it certainly served as a really good reminder that it is really important to take a look at what you're going to be riding, where you're going to be riding it, and make sure that you select the right bike for those needs. I hadn't really, I guess, paid full attention to what Canyon was marketing or had designed the Neuron ONfly for. I'd maybe taken the wrong end of the stick and assumed that it was going to be a little bit more playful and a little bit more aggressive than it actually is. And as a result, I wasn't quite able to enjoy this on my home trails, riding the bike as I intended it to be ridden or wanted to ride it. It was only once I really paid attention to who Canyon had designed this bike for and how they designed it that I was able to unlock its full capabilities, its full potential for providing a efficient, effective and fun machine to hit the trails with. I think Canyon really took the kind of trail name literally when they were designing this bike, in that it's designed for, or it feels like it's designed for trail centre riding. Now, where I am in the Tweed Valley in Scotland, we do have Glentress Trail Centre just down the road, but it's not a place that I frequent all that often. It's not necessarily the kind of riding that I love, and I don't think it's the best riding that we have locally to us. We're certainly blessed with some of the best enduro trails in the world and just some of the best natural terrain. Not all of it is super gnarly, super steep, super rugged, but the overall quality of the trails in the more natural space is just so high that it's pretty hard to get away from them to go and ride trail centre regularly. And I also would say that the Glentress recently has been revamped to the point that it's almost a bike park, but not so much of a trail centre. You've got less of the kind of long, natural flowing single track, and it's slightly more built up, kind of burlier, bigger hits, higher speeds, bigger G-outs, where you need a little bit more agility and a little bit more kind of burliness to really excel in that terrain too. But When I took this bike elsewhere in Scotland, found some of the best single track that we've got, some of the best kind of, trail centres, likes of Glenlivet, where you've got kilometres and kilometres of, just fast, flowy, like swoopy terrain. That's when this thing really came alive and when it provided a seriously fun time. Getting this bike set up is not difficult. It's a fairly unfussy suspension platform that Canyon uses with that kind of standard horse-link design. The RockShox suspension units are not fussy at all, especially with the base model damper, offering you limited adjustment, but also a very comfortable sort of set and forget style in how it performs, especially when you're trying to ride it on, varied but not too aggressive terrain. I was left in a fairly comfortable spot. All the geometry makes sense. It feels good in a balanced sort of trail scenario, and all the components performed with minimal fuss and didn't need any figuring out. Climbing this bike is pleasant as long as you've got not overly steep and not overly rough climbs. It does feel very efficient if you're winding your way up trail centers. The Bosch SX system feels fantastic for a trail center climb where they're not super steep, but wind in and you need to maintain a high cadence, and it just feels energetic. It rewards you for the input that you put into it and gives you plenty of zip to get you up all but the steepest of climbs. The geometry is solid. It's not the most centralized seating position. It is a little bit more conventional in how it puts you on the bike, but by no means are you way off the back so that it's a struggle. And you can navigate the climbs with good success. It's certainly not a difficult bike to climb and absolutely does excel in kind of trail center scenarios. The suspension platform, it gives you plenty of efficiency, but it does so without being overly harsh as well, meaning that it is nice and comfortable, especially the kind of smaller chatter bumps that you get often in trail centers with the rocks poking through. This bike does eat it up. And that trail kind of focused tire combo by Schwalbe as well does suit it fairly well, albeit not giving you the absolute most traction for the sloppier or just slippier in general climbs. Overall, as a trail center machine, climbing the Canyon Neuron ONfly CF7 is an absolute pleasure. On the way down the hill, and perhaps I've alluded to it already, but the Neuron ONfly CF7 does definitely have a limit. It's not a bike that you're going to be able to attack the roughest and rowdiest enduro trails on in confidence. And to be fair, that's not what Canyon designed it for at all. But yeah, I think for me, my problem with the bike is that it's got fairly stable geometry, especially that fairly long rear end, which pushes you to go fast because you've got plenty of stability there. And also the suspension is nice and supple off the top, so you can almost get lured into a false sense of security that it's going to be able to handle more aggressive riding than it actually can. But as long as you ride this bike with a more trail center, just generally appropriate mindset, it is an absolute riot to ride, and especially, like I mentioned, in like swoopy trail center terrain, this bike is an absolute blast. When speeds get really high, but the trail isn't too rough, that's when this thing really comes alive. It gives you plenty of stability. It's super nice, kind of low planted, sunk into the bike feel that the geometry offers, gives you plenty of confidence, and it's stiff enough. It's not, it's not like a super wallowy suspension platform either. So you can push it fairly hard in the corners and still feel rewarded for your efforts. And the overall weight does feel slightly higher than the number might say, just because the geometry is quite long and sprawled out, but it's by no means a heavy bike. And going transitioning from corner to corner, it feels really nice and light and snappy and active, and it's super fun. Jumping this bike was absolutely fine as well. It's obviously not a bike designed for big hucks, and I did find the bottom out bumper on both ends quite a few times in either misjudged landings or just by riding jumps slightly bigger than it's intended to. It's not a super progressive machine, but the kind of jumps you're likely to get on your typical kind of blue or red trail center run in the UK, this bike's going to be absolutely up to the task for. Looking at the spec, and there's not really been any issues with the bike. Everything performs solidly, just without that kind of super high quality premium feel that you might get from a higher spec level. But given that this is a $5,000 or so entry level-ish electric mountain bike with a carbon fiber frame, I think it's spec'd fairly sensibly. The Kodar brakes aren't fantastic, but they certainly do the trick of slowing it down when kept within its own remit. The suspension units aren't super tunable, but I was able to get them set up to a fairly comfortable level. The drivetrain was absolutely flawless. The Bosch SX system is excellent. The only issue I did have was some serious crown steer unit creaking that came into towards the end of the testing, and was certainly something that I would have to warranty the bike if it were my own. But these things happen. It's certainly not the first suspension fork that I've had with such an issue, and yeah, it's the kind of thing that RockShox will support and replace without too many questions. Otherwise, this has proved to be a high quality bike overall. There's been absolutely no issues with any of the frame hardware or anything like that. It runs fairly quietly, and you just get a generally high quality kind of premium feeling of it, aside from some of the slightly less flashy spec level on there. The wheels did lose all of their tensioning on both ends after the first couple of rides, but once I was able to retension them all and keep an eye on them with the spoke key, they did hold up just fine. Rear hub engagement isn't fantastic. It doesn't feel like the highest quality unit, but it does the job just fine, and everything else was absolutely problem-free. Well then, there you have it. That is the Canyon Neuron ONfly CF7. If you're looking for a lightweight trail center ripper, then I don't think you have to look much further. This thing is an absolute blast if you're keeping it within its intentions. It's just if you get a bit excited and let its stability and supple suspension platform lead you astray that it can start to get a little bit overwhelmed. Give us a like if you've enjoyed this video. Leave us a comment if there's anything you want to know about the Neuron ONfly CF7 that we haven't covered, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more awesome content. And please do consider subscribing to our members only page, where you'll be able to get put in the hat to join us for shootout testing, to get sent review product to test for us and get to keep yourselves, as well as helping to support us in our independent mountain bike content creation. Thank you very much for watching. Catch you out on the trails.